Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that the world you know, the comforts you rely on, the conveniences you take for granted, have completely disappeared. No soft mattress, no pillow that cradles your head just right, no warm blankets or climate-controlled rooms. The smell of fresh coffee is nowhere in sight. Your phone is missing, and the gentle hum of modern life, the sounds you don't even realize you hear, has vanished. Instead, you wake up in a time thousands of years ago, in a land that is both breathtaking and brutally unforgiving. You are now in ancient Greece. The sun rises over a rugged landscape dotted with olive groves and terraced hills. The air is sharp with the tang of the sea, the smell of livestock, and the earthy scent of tilled fields. You might think this is a dream. After all, ancient Greece is the cradle of Western civilization, the birthplace of democracy, philosophy, literature, and art. You might imagine yourself walking through marble temples, debating with philosophers in bustling agoras, or watching grand athletic contests in amphitheaters. It sounds idyllic, doesn't it? The truth, however, is far more complicated, far harsher, and far less forgiving to someone used to the luxuries of modern life. In fact, if you were to spend even a single day here, you would find yourself overwhelmed, exhausted, and questioning whether humans were truly meant to survive in this world without modern protections. Let's start with the streets. You step outside, and immediately you notice how different the city feels. The roads are not paved with smooth asphalt, but are dusty, uneven paths, crowded with people, animals, and carts. Goats and donkeys wander freely, leaving behind the unmistakable signs of their passage, while vendors shout, hawking their goods in voices sharp and penetrating. You quickly realize that traffic isn't managed, rules of conduct are not enforced, and personal space is a foreign concept. Every step you take requires careful attention, not just to avoid tripping over stones or debris, but to navigate around livestock and other humans. And the noise, it is incessant. The clatter of cartwheels, the chatter of people bargaining, the bleating of animals, and the calls of street vendors create a cacophony that would be enough to make even the most patient modern person feel frazzled. Then there is the sun. Unlike the controlled environments you are accustomed to, the heat here is relentless. Shadows are scarce, shade is a luxury, and the Greek sun in midsummer is merciless. You quickly realize that there is no air conditioning, no cold drinks to keep you refreshed, no protective sunblock to prevent the skin from burning. Every exposed inch of your body feels it, burning, itching, tender. You have to think carefully about movement, timing, and exertion. Walking from one part of the city to another becomes a calculated effort, and the exhaustion builds without relief. The human body, adapted to modern comforts, struggles to keep up with this natural rhythm. Your first encounter with food is a revelation, and not a pleasant one. Hunger strikes, and you expect to find cafes, restaurants, or at least some modern convenience. Instead, the diet of an average Greek citizen stares you in the face, simple, austere, and surprisingly unappealing by modern standards. Barley bread is a staple, often hard and dry, eaten plain or dipped in olive oil. Olives, while plentiful, are intensely salty and bitter, far removed from the delicate, marinated varieties you might enjoy today. Fish, if you are lucky and live near the coast, provides some protein, but meat is rare, reserved for festivals or the wealthy elite. And spices? Almost non-existent. You might try to season your food with what is available, but the options are few and unrefined. Even fruit, though grown abundantly, is consumed in season, leaving long periods when the diet is repetitive and monotonous. Water, the simplest necessity, becomes a challenge. Ancient Greeks did have aqueducts, wells, and fountains, but clean, safe drinking water is not guaranteed. The source must be chosen carefully, and contamination is a real risk. You begin to understand how easy it would be to fall ill simply from hydration, a concept that modern life has sanitized to the point of forgetfulness. The idea that a single sip from a polluted source could lead to days of sickness is alarming, and yet it is a daily reality for the average citizen. Your modern expectations of cleanliness, convenience, and safety clash violently with the practical realities of life here. As you navigate further, you notice the buildings themselves. Simple, functional, and lacking insulation, they offer little protection against the elements. Stone walls and clay roofs provide minimal comfort against the cold of winter or the heat of summer. Floors are uneven, often bare, and furniture is sparse. Privacy is a luxury, personal space is limited, and walls do not shield you from the noise of neighbors, animals, or street life. Even sleeping arrangements are basic. Warmth comes from shared blankets, animal hides, or proximity to others. You start to feel the vulnerability of a body not acclimated to such an environment. The comforts you take for granted, soft beds, heating, cooling, personal hygiene, are all absent, and the absence is palpable. Health is another glaring concern. Medical knowledge is rudimentary at best. Illnesses that modern medicine treats easily are potential threats to survival here. Cuts, infections, fevers, or broken bones are not trivial inconveniences, they are potentially fatal. Remedies involve herbs, rituals, and a fair bit of guesswork. The idea that a simple scratch or bruise could spiral into a life-threatening condition is not hypothetical. It is a reality you must contend with from the moment you step outside. The fragility of the human body in this environment becomes increasingly clear, and you realize that survival requires more than knowledge. It requires resilience, endurance, and a tolerance for discomfort that modern humans rarely develop. Social structure adds another layer of challenge. Ancient Greek society is rigid and hierarchical. Roles are clearly defined, and expectations are strict. Men, women, and slaves occupy distinct spheres, and deviation from assigned duties can have serious consequences. Even for a free citizen, participation in civic duties, religious observances, and daily labor is non-negotiable. Failure to comply invites not just social scorn but practical repercussions, exclusion, fines, or worse. The social pressure to conform is intense, and the flexibility of modern life, the freedom to choose your path, career, or leisure, is non-existent. Your modern sensibilities, shaped by autonomy and choice, clash with a society that demands conformity, discipline, and constant awareness of social expectations. Religion permeates every aspect of life. The gods are real, tangible forces, and their favor or wrath is believed to influence every event. Omitting a ritual, disrespecting a sacred space, or failing to honor the divine correctly is not merely taboo, it is dangerous. You quickly understand that survival in this society is not just physical, it is spiritual and social. Ignorance or disregard for religious practices could result in ostracism, public humiliation, or worse. Every action, every word is observed and interpreted in light of a divine framework that demands attention, respect, and adherence. The sensory overload continues with sights, sounds, and experiences that your modern brain struggles to process. Markets overflow with goods, smells of spices, fish, meat, and fermenting foods mix in ways both enticing and repulsive. The chatter of merchants, the shouting of children, the cries of animals, the clanging of tools, and the distant chanting of religious ceremonies create a relentless oral tapestry. The visual stimulation of bustling streets, open-air theaters, public fountains, and temples overwhelms your modern eyes, accustomed to curated environments. Even your sense of smell is assaulted by a combination of natural, human, and animal odors that are inescapable. Every moment demands awareness, attention, and adaptation. There is no escape from the raw, unfiltered reality of life here, and yet, despite the harshness, there is beauty, sophistication, and genius. The architecture, art, theater, philosophy, and civic innovation reveal a society striving for excellence, understanding, and expression. You see the birthplace of democracy, the origins of mathematics, science, and medicine, and the creation of stories and myths that would influence millennia. But beauty here is intertwined with struggle. Every achievement is set against the backdrop of survival, labor, and discipline. The Greeks' accomplishments are astonishing precisely because they were forged in a world that tested every human capacity, physical, mental, social, and spiritual. By now you begin to understand why a modern human would struggle to survive a day in ancient Greece. The environment is demanding, the social expectations are strict, the diet is limited, and the dangers, both visible and invisible, are everywhere. The comforts and conveniences of modern life, food delivery, climate control, healthcare, personal hygiene, entertainment, privacy, are not just luxuries here, they are lifelines that you no longer have. Without these, every step, every breath, every interaction becomes a test of endurance and adaptation. And as you pause, taking in the landscape, the people, and the unrelenting demands of daily life, you realize the truth. Ancient Greece was not a world designed for comfort. It was a world designed for survival, skill, and resilience. The Greeks achieved incredible things not because life was easy, but because life demanded constant vigilance, strength, and ingenuity. If you were suddenly thrust into this world, without preparation, without knowledge, without support, it is almost certain that you would struggle, and perhaps fail, to survive even a single day. The sun climbs higher, the streets grow busier, and the smells, sights, and sounds intensify. You take a cautious step forward, aware that every choice matters. Your stomach growls, your muscles ache, and your mind races to process the demands of this ancient world. You think about food, water, shelter, safety, and social norms. You realize that this is just the beginning, the first few hours of a day that will challenge every modern assumption you hold, and you understand that what seems like a simple morning, waking up, moving, eating, interacting, becomes a monumental feat of survival in a time before modern conveniences, before medicine, before comfort. Ancient Greece is magnificent, inspiring, and unforgettable, but it is also brutally unforgiving. And you, with your modern habits, expectations, and sensibilities, are not prepared. Survival here is not guaranteed. In fact, your odds are alarmingly low. The world you have stepped into will test you in ways that are unimaginable from the cozy perspective of the present. Every sensation, every action, and every thought must adapt, or you will quickly learn that this world, as beautiful and historic as it is, does not bend to modern sensibilities. It is relentless, exacting, and supremely demanding, a world where only the vigilant, the skilled, and the resilient endure. By the end of your first morning, the reality is undeniable. Surviving a day in ancient Greece is not just difficult. For someone like you, accustomed to the comforts and protections of modern life, it is almost impossible. The streets, the sun, the diet, the social structures, the hygiene, and the very air you breathe demand adaptation, endurance, and toughness beyond what you thought you had. And yet, this is the world that created some of the most enduring achievements in human history, a world that molded philosophers, warriors, artists, and citizens capable of extraordinary feats. You step back, take a deep breath, and realize, if you think you could survive a day here, think again. Imagine that your first thought after waking in ancient Greece is hunger. You reach for something familiar in your modern kitchen, something comforting, a piece of toast, a bowl of cereal, maybe even a cup of coffee, but none of it exists. There is no kitchen, no refrigerator, no grocery store, no delivery service that can magically bring sustenance to your door in minutes. Instead, you are faced with the stark reality of what an average Greek citizen actually ate. And the truth? If you think surviving a day in ancient Greece is easy, your stomach is about to prove you wrong. Food was not just sustenance, it was a matter of survival, and the choices were limited by season, location, and social class. The backbone of the diet for ordinary citizens, peasants, laborers, artisans, was barley bread. Barley, unlike wheat, was hardy and could grow in rocky soils. making it reliable but not particularly pleasant. Imagine trying to chew a loaf that is dense, hard, and flavorless. Your teeth may ache after the first bite. For those used to fluffy, warm bread from a bakery, this is a rude awakening. Bread was often eaten plain, sometimes dipped in water or olive oil to soften it slightly, but even then it is a far cry from the sandwiches, pastries, and loaves we take for granted today. Then there were olives, abundant in the sun-soaked hills of Greece, but these weren't the delicate marinated olives you find in a gourmet store. These were often bitter, oily, and intensely salty, consumed more for nourishment than pleasure. Olive oil, on the other hand, was a staple in every meal, not as a condiment for flavor, but as a vital source of calories and fat. For many Greeks, olive oil was a lifeline, a dense energy source that could help sustain them through long hours of labor or harsh conditions. You might try to incorporate it into your diet, but its richness, combined with the monotony of bread and olives, quickly makes modern taste buds rebel. Protein, the essential building block for energy and strength, was another challenge. Fish was common along the coasts, especially in city-states like Athens, where the Mediterranean Sea provided a steady supply. But even this had its limitations. Fish was salted or dried for preservation, and the methods of cooking were rudimentary compared to today. If you're used to a perfectly grilled salmon with lemon and herbs, the experience of biting into dried or heavily salted fish could be jarring. Fresh fish was available seasonally and depended on luck, local supply, and wealth. Meat, however, was a rare luxury. Pigs, goats, and sheep were primarily raised for milk, wool, or trade. Meat was reserved for special occasions, religious festivals, or the tables of the wealthy. The common citizen might go months without tasting it. Imagine your modern habits: bacon, steak, chicken nuggets. Suddenly removed, the craving would become almost unbearable. And spices? Forget it. The ancient Greeks had access to some herbs, oregano, thyme, and coriander, but the variety was limited. The exotic spices we enjoy today, cinnamon, pepper, cumin, were rare and expensive imports. Inaccessible to most people, meals were simple, functional, and repetitive. Imagine a day where your palate experiences barley bread, olives, and maybe a little cheese or dried fish. That's it. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner might not differ much. The monotony alone could be enough to make someone despair. Now imagine trying to cook. There is no modern stove, no microwave, no oven. You rely on open fires, clay stoves, or small hearths inside simple homes. Controlling heat is difficult, and cooking requires patience, skill, and constant attention. Burn your bread, and you waste a precious meal. Overcook the fish, and it becomes inedible. Even water for cooking must be drawn from a well or fountain, carried by hand, and possibly filtered through cloth or boiled, consuming both time and energy. Preparing a meal becomes a laborious task, something that today we take for granted with a simple push of a button or turn of a knob. Water, the foundation of all sustenance, presents another challenge. Ancient Greeks had access to wells, fountains, and aqueducts in some cities, but water quality was variable. Clean, drinkable water could not be guaranteed, and contamination was a constant risk. Drinking from an unsafe source could lead to illness, dehydration, or even death. For someone accustomed to bottled water, filtration systems, or tap water treated for safety, this is a shocking reality. Every sip is a calculated risk, and thirst becomes not just discomfort, but a survival concern. Cheese and other dairy products were often part of the diet, particularly for those who raised goats or sheep. Feta and soft cheeses were consumed fresh or preserved, but they were not the rich, creamy products we expect today. They were functional, salty, and dense. Milk itself was often turned into yogurt or fermented products to extend its usability. These items added some protein and fat to the diet, but they could not replace the limited variety of the modern diet. Hunger remained a constant companion, demanding creativity, resourcefulness, and endurance. And then there is seasonality. Modern supermarkets carry produce from around the world all year round. In ancient Greece, what you ate depended entirely on the season. Winter meant root vegetables, preserved foods, and dried grains. Summer offered fruit, olives, and fresh herbs, but these were fleeting. If you arrived in a season of scarcity, your stomach would growl, and your options would be minimal. Starvation was a real threat for the poor, especially in times of drought, crop failure, or conflict. Survival was tied directly to nature's rhythms, something modern humans rarely experience. Even festivals and special occasions, which offered more variety, could be physically challenging. During religious or civic celebrations, large amounts of food might be prepared, including meat, fish, bread, and wine. Yet participation required effort, traveling long distances, enduring crowds, and sometimes fasting before feasts. The food, though more abundant than usual, was still prepared with simple tools, cooked over open fires, and subject to the unpredictability of weather, smoke, and uneven heat. The joy of abundance was tempered by the labor needed to obtain it, the risk of contamination, and the uncertainty of the day. Street food existed, but it was basic. Vendors sold bread, olives, figs, or simple pastries, often prepared with limited hygiene. Eating on the go might fill your stomach but introduce new risks: spoiled food, unclean preparation surfaces, and disease. The idea of grabbing a snack from a clean, temperature-controlled cafe was unimaginable. Hunger meant improvisation, sometimes eating raw vegetables, dried fish, or whatever was available, often unappealing and nutritionally limited. Your modern cravings, chocolate, coffee, tea, sugary treats, simply do not exist. Sweets were rare, usually made from honey, and consumed sparingly. You might find honey cakes or figs stuffed with nuts, but these are not enough to satisfy a modern sweet tooth. Imagine living without candy, soda, or chocolate for a day, and then imagine it for months. The absence of comfort foods makes survival a test not just of physical endurance, but mental resilience. Even the social aspect of eating is strikingly different. Today, meals are often leisurely, social events, opportunities for connection, conversation, or relaxation. In ancient Greece, meals were functional, quick, and communal in a different sense. Laborers might eat together, sharing limited portions. Families gathered, but there was little luxury or indulgence. Hunger dictated behavior, and scarcity shaped relationships. You quickly learn that patience, adaptability, and gratitude for every bite are necessary just to endure. And let's not forget the risk of foodborne illness. Without refrigeration, preservatives, or modern hygiene standards, food spoiled quickly. Bread could mold, fish could rot, and water could carry parasites. Ancient Greeks relied on smell, appearance, and experience to judge edibility, but these are not foolproof. Modern humans, accustomed to sanitation, would be at high risk of gastrointestinal distress or worse. Every meal becomes a calculated gamble, nourishment versus illness. Your stomach and immune system face constant challenges that modern conveniences have shielded you from. Finally, consider the psychological toll. Modern humans are accustomed to variety, predictability, and ease. A day without a snack, coffee, or quick meal creates discomfort. A week can create irritability. Imagine surviving months on a diet of barley, olives, cheese, and occasionally dried fish with few spices, no refrigeration, and no luxury. Hunger becomes a constant companion, shaping every thought and decision. Your mental resilience, as well as your physical endurance, is tested daily. The Greeks lived with this reality every day, adapting, thriving, and even creating a civilization capable of incredible art, philosophy, and innovation despite, or perhaps because of, their harsh diet. Surviving in ancient Greece was not about pleasure or indulgence. It was about pragmatism and necessity. Every meal required effort, planning, and acceptance of what was available. Luxury was rare and monotony was the norm. Modern humans, accustomed to abundance and choice, would find this not just challenging but impossible to endure without preparation, skill, and mental fortitude. Your stomach, your expectations, and your modern palate would all revolt. Even after acquiring basic sustenance, you would feel the profound absence of convenience, taste, and variety that defines life today. The Greeks thrived not because food was abundant or pleasurable, but because they adapted to scarcity, worked for survival, and found satisfaction in nourishment itself rather than indulgence. By midday your stomach growls relentlessly. Every bite is a reminder of how different this world is. You might crave modern food, even junk food, anything to satiate hunger and comfort your mind. But here, comfort is rare, and survival comes first. You quickly learn to appreciate olive oil, to savor barley bread, and to accept fish as a necessary protein source rather than a gourmet delight. Every meal is a lesson in resilience, adaptation, and respect for the effort required to eat it all. By evening, hunger has shaped your day in ways unimaginable in modern life. Every action, every thought, every conversation has been influenced by the need for nourishment. Even if you are lucky enough to obtain food, it is simple, plain, and often repetitive. Your modern tastes, trained on variety, convenience, and indulgence, clash with the austere reality of survival in ancient Greece. And yet, the Greeks themselves were able to thrive, create, and innovate despite, or perhaps because of, these limitations. Food, scarcity, and labor became part of the framework that shaped culture, art, and society. By the end of this day it becomes painfully clear. Surviving in ancient Greece was as much about enduring monotony and scarcity as it was about eating. Your body and mind, conditioned by modern life, would rebel. Hunger is relentless, variety is non-existent, and the effort required to obtain, prepare, and safely consume food is constant. You realize that for someone used to convenience, abundance, and indulgence, even a single day in this diet would feel like an insurmountable challenge. And so, as the sun sets over olive groves, markets close, and the streets quiet, you understand the harsh truth. Surviving a day in ancient Greece is not just about avoiding danger or physical harm. It is about adapting to a diet that would test your patience, your body, and your spirit. Your modern comforts, restaurants, snacks, variety, hygiene, have been stripped away. What remains is survival, plain bread, olives, fish, cheese, and the acceptance that this is life here. To endure, you must rethink food, hunger, and satisfaction entirely. And in that realization you understand one of the most fundamental challenges of ancient life. Nourishment, simple yet essential, was never guaranteed, never easy, and never indulgent. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, you start to notice just how demanding life in ancient Greece really is. The streets are alive with motion, but it's not the casual bustle of a modern city. Every person you pass seems to have a purpose, a task, or a duty that dominates their day from dawn until dusk. Here, life isn't measured by convenience or comfort. It is measured by work, endurance, and survival. And if you think that stepping into this world is like wandering through a historical museum, think again. Ancient Greek daily life is not a spectacle, it's a challenge, a relentless rhythm of labor, obligation, and adaptation. For someone accustomed to modern amenities, even the simplest tasks become trials. The first thing you notice is the intensity of manual labor. Most Greeks, especially those who were not wealthy landowners or aristocrats, spent their entire day working the land, crafting goods, or performing services that kept the city functioning. Farmers rose before sunrise, often with the crowing of roosters as their alarm clocks. They tend fields of barley, wheat, and vegetables, preparing the soil, planting seeds, weeding, and harvesting. Their hands are calloused from handling hoes, plows, and sickles. Their backs are bent under the sun, carrying baskets heavy with grain or tools. For someone used to sitting in a comfortable office or lounging at home, this kind of labor is exhausting. You start to realize that every day was physically demanding, and even small tasks required skill, strength, and endurance. Imagine being handed a plow pulled by oxen, asked to till a rocky field in the scorching sun. Sweat drips from your forehead, your muscles ache in ways you didn't know possible, and yet you must continue. There is no air conditioning, no water bottle filled with ice-cold water, no chance to sit down for a coffee break. Every movement requires effort, focus, and resilience. The concept of leisure is foreign. In this world, leisure is reserved for the wealthy elite, philosophers, or occasional festivals, not the average citizen. You quickly realize that if you are unaccustomed to physical exertion, surviving the day is a monumental task. Labor isn't limited to farming. Many Greeks were artisans, potters, carpenters, blacksmiths, weavers, whose work required not just strength but skill and precision. Imagine shaping clay for hours on end without modern tools, hammering iron with no mechanical assistance, or weaving intricate fabrics entirely by hand. The concentration needed, combined with physical strain, is extraordinary. Mistakes could ruin an entire day's work, wasting precious time and resources. Modern humans, used to labor-saving devices, are ill-prepared for this kind of constant hands-on toil. Even seemingly simple tasks, like carrying water from a well, could sap energy and test endurance. In city-states like Athens, daily life included not just physical labor, but also navigating crowded, bustling streets. Streets are narrow, uneven, and dusty, filled with pedestrians, animals, carts, and vendors. Goats, donkeys, and chickens wander freely, leaving behind a combination of manure and noise. You step carefully to avoid slipping, tripping, or being struck by a cart. The heat is relentless, and there is no escape from the sun. Shade is scarce, and the combination of dust, animal odors, and sweat creates a sensory environment that is overwhelming for someone accustomed to modern hygiene and climate control. Every movement requires vigilance. Every step is a calculation. The concept of casually strolling down the street is laughable. You are immediately immersed in a world that tests both body and mind simultaneously. Even if you are not performing manual labor, life demands constant participation in civic and social duties. Citizens were expected to engage in politics, attend assemblies, participate in religious rituals, and contribute to public works. Skipping obligations is not an option. In some city-states, such as Athens, failure to participate in civic duties could result in fines, social ostracism, or worse. Your modern sense of independence, doing only what you want when you want, is impossible to exercise fully. Every action, from attending a meeting in the agora to helping neighbors, is bound by societal expectation. Life is structured, demanding, and inescapable, even for those who are not physically laboring from dawn to dusk. For women, daily life presents a different but equally demanding challenge. In most Greek city-states, women's roles were confined primarily to the household. They were responsible for cooking, cleaning, weaving textiles, fetching water, and managing domestic affairs. Imagine carrying heavy water jars from distant fountains multiple times a day, tending to children, preparing meals on open fires, and spinning thread or weaving cloth, all without modern tools or appliances. The labor is ceaseless, and even the smallest lapse could affect the family's survival. Modern conveniences, from washing machines to water taps to electric ovens, do not exist. Every action requires strength, skill, and continuous effort. Leisure is almost non-existent, and social restrictions further limit personal freedom. Even children are not exempt from labor. Boys and girls were expected to help in family tasks from a young age, learning practical skills and contributing to survival. Boys might assist in farming, tending animals, or apprenticing with a craftsman. Girls learned domestic skills, cooking, weaving, and managing household duties. Play exists, but it is intertwined with learning and preparation for adult responsibilities. The concept of a carefree childhood where survival is not a concern is largely absent. From a young age, every individual is taught to work, endure, and contribute to the household and community. The mental strain of daily life is as taxing as the physical effort. You are constantly aware of obligations, tasks left unfinished, and the ever-present threat of scarcity. What if the harvest fails? What if illness strikes? What if a tool breaks or a cart overturns? Every day carries risk, and every mistake can have serious consequences. Modern humans, accustomed to safety nets, insurance, and emergency services, are unprepared for this constant awareness of danger and responsibility. Stress is not a hidden factor. It is woven into the fabric of every task and decision. Life demands vigilance, planning, and mental resilience from morning until night. Weather adds another layer of challenge. Winters are cold, damp, and harsh, with little insulation in homes. Summers are hot, sunny, and dehydrating. There is no modern clothing, no heating systems, no cooling devices. Every season requires adaptation. Cold hands, blistered feet, sunburned skin, and exhaustion are not anomalies. They are the norm. Survival depends not just on labor and skill, but on your ability to endure environmental extremes. You quickly realize that your modern body, acclimated to climate-controlled spaces, struggles to adapt. Even leisure and celebration are laborious. Festivals, religious observances, and athletic events require participation, preparation, and sometimes physical exertion. Carrying offerings to temples, preparing food for communal events, or participating in processions demands energy, endurance, and adherence to social norms. These activities are woven into daily life and cannot be ignored. Life is a continuous cycle of work, obligation, and participation. There is no escape into relaxation or casual entertainment as you know it. Social hierarchies further complicate daily existence. Citizens, medics, resident foreigners, and slaves all have clearly defined roles. Slaves perform the hardest and most dangerous labor, often working in households, fields, or workshops with minimal freedom and harsh oversight. Citizens have duties but also rights and privileges, yet even they must navigate social expectations, legal obligations, and civic responsibilities. Failure to fulfill one's role can have serious consequences, from fines to social exclusion. In such a structured society, freedom is limited, and survival is as much about compliance and awareness as it is about physical strength. Transportation and trade add additional labor. Moving goods, grain, oil, pottery, textiles, from farms to markets or workshops, requires physical effort and coordination. Carts pulled by oxen or donkeys are slow and cumbersome. Roads are uneven and sometimes dangerous. Traveling even short distances can take hours, draining energy before the day's primary work has even begun. Modern humans, used to vehicles and public transportation, would be shocked by the sheer physicality of daily mobility in ancient Greece. The streets, the homes, the workshops, and the fields are all interconnected in a rhythm of daily life that leaves little room for error or idleness. Every day, from sunrise to sunset, is a test of endurance, skill, and adaptability. Hunger, exhaustion, social obligations, environmental challenges, and manual labor combine into a relentless cycle. A modern visitor, accustomed to convenience, ease, and choice, would find themselves overwhelmed, struggling to keep up, and unprepared for the demands of this ancient world. By the time the sun begins to set, your muscles ache, your back throbs, and your mind races with the realization that survival here is not optional, it is mandatory. Every day requires planning, effort, and resilience, and there are no shortcuts. Even the smallest lapse, dropping a basket, misjudging a load, forgetting a duty, can have cascading effects. You start to understand why Greek citizens developed stamina, ingenuity, and discipline. It was not just for personal growth or cultural achievement, but for daily survival in a world that demanded constant labor and attention. At the end of the day, exhaustion is inevitable. But this is only one day, a single cycle in a life dominated by work, responsibility, and adaptation. Imagine repeating this day for months, years, decades. Labor is continuous, challenges are persistent, and survival requires more than modern comfort or convenience. The Greeks, through centuries of adaptation, developed resilience, skill, and social cohesion to thrive in such conditions. Modern humans, suddenly thrust into this world, are unprepared for the relentless rhythm, the physical demands, and the mental pressures of daily life. And so, as darkness falls, fires are lit in homes, and the city quiets down, you are left with a profound realization: life in ancient Greece is a world of ceaseless labor, demanding endurance, skill, and unwavering attention. Modern expectations, comfort, convenience, choice, are illusions here. Survival is a daily triumph, and even a single day is enough to teach a modern human how fragile, unprepared, and out of practice we really are. If you thought you could stroll through this world, relax, and enjoy the scenery, think again. Every step, every task, every interaction is a test of your resilience, adaptability, and determination. By understanding this, you begin to appreciate the remarkable accomplishments of the Greeks. The art, philosophy, political systems, and literature we admire today were forged not in comfort, but in a world where survival required constant effort. Every citizen, artisan, laborer, and child contributed to a society that demanded endurance, and in doing so, they created the foundations of Western civilization. You realize that to survive even a single day in ancient Greece is to confront the full reality of human labor, endurance, and adaptability, and to recognize that modern life, with all its luxuries, has softened us in ways we rarely consider. As the day wears on in ancient Greece, you start to notice things that modern life has carefully shielded you from: smells, discomfort, and the delicate balance between cleanliness and survival. Hygiene, something we take for granted with running water, showers, toilets, and soaps, is not a given here. In fact, it is one of the areas where a modern human would be most out of place, most unprepared, and most likely to struggle. A single glance at the streets, the homes, and even the marketplaces makes it obvious that ancient Greek life is messy, unpredictable, and, in many ways, dangerous, at least to someone who has spent years in sanitized comfort. Let's start with personal cleanliness. The Greeks did understand the concept of bathing, but the practice was far from routine for everyone. Public baths existed in some cities, but they were primarily social spaces for the wealthy. For the average citizen, washing was a more sporadic and often labor-intensive task. Water had to be fetched from a well, fountain, or cistern, carried in heavy jars, and heated over a fire if warmth was desired. Soap, in the sense that we know it, was largely unavailable. People used oils, such as olive oil, to cleanse their skin. You would rub your body with oil, scrape it off with a tool called a strigil, and hope that dirt, sweat, and grime are removed sufficiently. Imagine doing this after a long day of farming or laboring under the hot sun. The process is exhausting, and the results are never as effective as the quick, refreshing showers you're used to. For someone accustomed to modern hygiene, this is a constant reminder of vulnerability and a shock to the senses. Hair care presents another challenge. Washing hair is not as simple as stepping into a shower. Hair must be oiled, rinsed carefully, or braided to keep it manageable. Long hair can become matted with dust, sweat, and particles from the environment. Imagine walking through crowded streets where goats, donkeys, and children create chaos, dust swirling in every direction. Your hair, once neatly styled in the morning, becomes a tangled, grimy mess by midday. Comb it, and you realize that lice and other pests are a constant presence. For someone used to shampoo, conditioner, and hair dryers, this is a harsh, unavoidable reality. The streets themselves are a direct assault on hygiene. Unlike modern cities, there is no system for sanitation. Streets are dusty, muddy, or sometimes wet, littered with animal droppings, leftover food, and refuse. You have to carefully navigate to avoid stepping in something unpleasant, but it's almost impossible to avoid contact entirely. Imagine walking to the market, carrying goods in baskets, trying to keep your feet clean, and knowing that every step exposes you to bacteria, parasites, and pathogens. In this environment, the risk of infection is constant, and your modern assumptions about clean surfaces, safe streets, and controlled environments are shattered within minutes. Public toilets are rare, rudimentary, and often unsanitary. For most citizens, relieving oneself requires improvisation, simple holes in the ground, shared with neighbors or near water sources. Privacy is limited, cleanliness is minimal, and the smell is unavoidable. Modern humans, accustomed to flush toilets, plumbing, and separation between spaces of living and sanitation, would be shocked and likely horrified. Even for Greeks, using these facilities requires caution and adaptation. You realize quickly that bodily functions which are private and hygienic in the modern sense are public, messy, and potentially dangerous in this world. Drinking water is another critical concern. While aqueducts, wells, and fountains exist, water quality is not guaranteed. Water can be contaminated with bacteria, parasites, or chemical elements from nearby soil or human activity. Without boiling, filtering, or chemical treatment, even a simple sip can lead to gastrointestinal distress or worse. For someone accustomed to the certainty of modern water systems, this uncertainty is alarming. Every step from fetching water to consuming it is a calculated risk, and misjudgment can have serious consequences. Thirst, dehydration, and illness are constant companions in daily life. Food hygiene is also rudimentary. Preservation methods are primitive. Meat is salted or dried, fish is smoked or left in the sun, and bread is stored in ways that cannot guarantee safety. Spoiled food is common. Without modern refrigeration, it is impossible to know if a meal is safe until it is consumed. Eating a small amount of spoiled fish or bread can result in intense sickness, sometimes fatal in combination with other factors. Even fruits and vegetables, though often fresh from the garden or market, are washed in questionable water or not at all. You realize that every meal carries risk, and that modern assumptions about safe, prepared, and monitored food are luxuries you cannot access. Illness in ancient Greece is far more dangerous than in modern times. Minor injuries, cuts, scrapes, bruises, that you would dismiss or treat easily today can become serious. Infection is a constant threat. Blood poisoning, gangrene, and other complications are common, and effective medical interventions are extremely limited. Physicians exist, but their tools, knowledge, and treatments are rudimentary. They rely on herbs, rudimentary surgery, and observation, but nothing like modern antiseptics, antibiotics, or surgical techniques. Even a small scratch while working in the fields or preparing food could escalate into a life-threatening condition. The fragility of the human body in this environment is stark, and the modern mind, conditioned by healthcare systems, struggles to accept this constant vulnerability. The Greek understanding of medicine was impressive for its time, with figures like Hippocrates pioneering observation and diagnosis. But even so, medical care is reactive and uncertain. There are no hospitals in the modern sense. Recovery depends on luck, skill, and the body's resilience. Epidemics, fevers, and common illnesses spread quickly through cities and villages. Without vaccinations or sanitation systems, diseases such as dysentery, malaria, and typhoid can sweep through populations with devastating effect. You begin to understand that survival here is a delicate balance, constantly threatened by factors beyond your control. Even the air carries risk. Crowded streets, indoor spaces with poor ventilation, and proximity to animals all increase exposure to pathogens. Dust and smoke from cooking fires irritate the lungs, while the smell of waste is unavoidable. Inhaling these elements over a single day can irritate, sicken, and weaken your body, and over time they contribute to the generally shorter lifespans observed in historical populations. Modern expectations of clean air, filtered spaces, and controlled environments are entirely absent. Every breath is a reminder that life in ancient Greece is raw, unfiltered, and potentially dangerous. The mental toll of hygiene and health conditions is significant. You are constantly aware of threats that modern life shields you from. Spoiled food, contaminated water, infected wounds, public waste, and disease. Anxiety about illness, injury, and survival becomes a background hum, influencing decisions and movements throughout the day. Even simple acts, such as eating, drinking, or washing, require vigilance. For someone used to predictable hygiene, cleanliness, and medical care, this awareness is exhausting, mentally and emotionally. Your modern assumptions about safety, sanitation, and personal protection are systematically dismantled as the day progresses. Children, too, face these challenges daily. Learning hygiene and survival skills is part of their upbringing. Boys and girls assist with water collection, food preparation, and household duties, often learning early that health is directly tied to labor, vigilance, and resource management. Illness or injury can affect the entire family, so children are trained to anticipate risks, manage resources, and assist in maintaining cleanliness under primitive conditions. This education is practical, continuous, and sometimes harsh, highlighting just how much modern childhoods differ from ancient experiences. Clothing also impacts hygiene and health. Linen and wool garments are common, but they are not easily cleaned or replaced. Sweat, dust, and grime accumulate quickly, and garments may be worn for extended periods. Washing clothing is labor-intensive, requiring large amounts of water, physical effort, and time. The lack of frequent washing contributes to body odor, lice, and other discomforts. Modern expectations of fresh, clean clothing every day are impossible here. Personal cleanliness is a continuous, often imperfect effort. You realize that even the most basic personal hygiene requires skill, energy, and vigilance. Mental resilience is as important as physical cleanliness. The constant awareness of disease, infection, and contamination requires focus and adaptation. Even simple decisions, where to drink water, which food to eat, which streets to walk, carry weight. Each choice has consequences, sometimes severe, and modern humans are unprepared for this level of constant risk assessment. Survival in ancient Greece demands not just endurance of the body, but endurance of the mind, a mental fortitude rarely exercised in contemporary life. Environmental factors further complicate health. Sun exposure, heat, cold, and dampness affect the body continuously. Without modern clothing, sunscreen, or climate control, heat stroke in summer and hypothermia in winter are real threats. Working outdoors, traveling through the streets, and performing labor under these conditions exposes you to relentless physical stress. Even water sources may contain natural toxins or harmful bacteria. The combination of environmental exposure and primitive hygiene means that every day is a battle against illness, infection, and fatigue. Public spaces, markets, temples, gathering areas introduce additional hazards. Crowds increase the spread of disease, while shared facilities amplify contact with germs and parasites. Social interaction, though necessary for civic life, carries inherent risks. Modern humans, accustomed to controlled, sanitized environments, would struggle with the constant exposure to pathogens, the absence of personal space, and the omnipresence of potentially harmful bacteria. Every handshake, every shared utensil, every step in a crowded street represents a small but cumulative health risk. And yet, the Greeks thrived. Despite these challenges, their civilization achieved remarkable feats in art, philosophy, science, and politics. How? By adapting, innovating, and prioritizing practical hygiene and health strategies within the limits of their knowledge. They used olive oil for cleansing, herbs for medicine, baths for social and health purposes, and public fountains for access to water. They understood risk, implemented preventive practices, and developed cultural norms around cleanliness and public health, even if these methods seem primitive today. Modern humans, suddenly thrust into this world, would be overwhelmed by the complexity, effort, and vigilance required just to maintain basic hygiene and health. By evening, your body and mind are exhausted. You have struggled against dust, sweat, contaminated water, spoiled food, disease, and constant exposure. Even if you survive the day without falling ill, your muscles ache, your senses are overwhelmed, and your awareness of risk is sharpened to a painful degree. Hygiene, health, and survival are inseparable, and the modern conveniences you rely on daily, running water, plumbing, refrigeration, soap, medicine, are absent. Without them, life is raw, relentless, and demanding. You begin to realize why ancient Greeks valued routines, social norms, and practical wisdom. Survival depended on vigilance, resourcefulness, and adaptation. A single lapse, drinking unsafe water, consuming spoiled food, ignoring hygiene, could have cascading consequences. Your modern assumptions about immunity, safety, and comfort are illusions. Here, every day is a confrontation with the vulnerabilities of the human body, and every action carries weight. By understanding this, you gain insight into the resilience, ingenuity, and discipline required to live in ancient Greece. By nightfall, as the city quiets, you reflect on the day. The lessons are clear. Hygiene is laborious, health is fragile, and every decision carries weight. Modern humans, accustomed to convenience, safety, and sanitation, are unprepared for the realities of ancient life. Surviving even a single day requires constant effort, mental alertness, and a willingness to endure discomfort that we rarely encounter today. You understand, perhaps for the first time, that ancient Greek society was not just culturally advanced, it was a civilization of resilience, adaptation, and daily survival. As the days in ancient Greece unfold, you begin to realize that survival is about more than food, labor, or hygiene. The very fabric of daily life is interwoven with social norms, expectations, and cultural rituals. In a modern city, you can largely move through life unnoticed, choosing your behaviors freely and bending social expectations to suit yourself. Here, in Greece, every action is scrutinized, every word carries weight, and every interaction is defined by a combination of tradition, hierarchy, and unspoken rules. For a modern human, even a single day navigating this web of social obligations is enough to induce confusion, anxiety, and exhaustion. Take greetings, for example. The Greeks did not casually wave or smile at strangers. Social interactions were ritualized and hierarchical. Citizens had specific expectations when speaking to one another, elders were respected with deference, men of higher social status demanded recognition, and strangers were approached cautiously. Failing to observe these rules could create offense, invite mockery, or even spark confrontation. You might think that a casual hello to a passerby is harmless, but in this world social blunders carry consequences. Modern assumptions about friendliness, equality, or anonymity are dangerously naive here. Public spaces like the agora, the central marketplace and meeting area, are not just bustling centers of commerce, they are theaters of social negotiation, performance, and competition. You are immediately aware that observing the behavior of others is crucial. How you carry yourself, how you dress, how you speak, and even how you hold your body communicate status, wealth, and respectability. A stumble in your mannerisms, or a misstep in etiquette, can brand you as ignorant or disrespectful. You realize that survival in this environment is not just physical, it is social, requiring acute awareness of customs, manners, and expectations. Marriage and family structures add another layer of complexity. Women, particularly in city-states like Athens, had clearly defined roles, managing the household, supervising slaves if present, caring for children, and maintaining the family's honor. Social mobility and personal autonomy are limited, and public scrutiny is constant. Men, meanwhile, are expected to contribute to civic life, engage in politics, and demonstrate competence in both work and leisure. Social success is measured by adherence to these roles. Failure to comply brings not only personal shame but practical consequences in relationships, property, and social standing. For someone used to the relative flexibility of modern social norms, These rigid expectations are overwhelming. Education also serves as a social regulator. Boys from wealthier families might study rhetoric, philosophy, mathematics, and athletics, preparing for civic leadership. Girls, on the other hand, are trained in domestic skills, spinning, weaving, cooking, and managing a household. These roles are not optional, they are societal imperatives. Education is deeply tied to social survival. For someone suddenly transported into this world, the learning curve is steep, and every misstep risks embarrassment or exclusion. Even observing children as they practice these skills is a reminder that social norms are internalized early, and deviation is conspicuous. Religion permeates social life as well. Ancient Greeks live in a world where the gods are omnipresent, and divine favor influences nearly every action. Public rituals, sacrifices, and festivals are essential social obligations. Seeing a festival, offending a deity, or performing a ritual incorrectly is not just spiritually risky, it is socially perilous. A misstep could brand you as impious, untrustworthy, or even cursed. Modern secular assumptions, or the freedom to ignore religious practices, are completely incompatible with the expectations of Greek society. Your every gesture, word, and action is measured against divine and social standards, whether you are aware of it or not. Public entertainment is a window into Greek social norms, but it is also another test of endurance and adaptation. Festivals feature music, dancing, athletic contests, and theatrical performances, but participating in or attending these events is physically and socially demanding. Imagine walking for hours to reach a festival, standing or sitting on hard stone for long periods, and navigating crowds where social status dictates seating, attention, and interaction. The plays, often tragedies or comedies, are dense with political commentary, moral instruction, and cultural nuance. Misunderstanding the dialogue, laughing at the wrong moment, or appearing inattentive can mark you as foolish. In a world where social perception shapes survival, even entertainment is fraught with risk. Athletics, too, are central to Greek life. Public games like the Olympic competitions or local contests are not mere spectacles, they are arenas where social status, honor, and skill are demonstrated. Participation is grueling, requiring rigorous physical preparation, discipline, and mastery. Spectatorship is also governed by social rules. Seating arrangements, applause, conversation, and etiquette must be observed carefully. Imagine a modern person used to casual sporting events being thrust into this world. The intensity of both participation and observation is exhausting, and even minor social faux pas are conspicuous. Entertainment is thus inseparable from social survival, status, and reputation. Dining is another crucial arena for social norms. Communal meals, or symposia, are structured, hierarchical, and ritualistic. Seating arrangements reflect status. The order of drinking or speaking is prescribed, and conversation must adhere to social and cultural expectations. Humor, critique, or disagreement is carefully moderated. Eating incorrectly, speaking out of turn, or consuming too much or too little could damage your reputation. Modern habits, casual meals, fast food, eating alone or on the go, are incompatible with this structured social ritual. Here even a meal is a performance, a negotiation, and a test of social intelligence. Slavery further complicates the social landscape. Slaves are an integral part of Greek society, performing essential labor in households, workshops, and public spaces. Citizens depend on them, but social rules strictly delineate interactions. Misunderstanding these rules could provoke conflict, undermine your safety, or disrupt household harmony. For a modern human, accustomed to egalitarian norms, navigating these social hierarchies is perplexing and potentially dangerous. Awareness, observation, and compliance are key to surviving daily interactions. Gender roles shape nearly every aspect of social life. Women's freedoms are limited, and public presence is often restricted. Men are expected to display strength, skill, and civic engagement. Deviating from these roles, intentionally or inadvertently, invites social disapproval. You quickly realize that your modern assumptions about equality, freedom of expression, and social flexibility are liabilities in this world. Survival requires understanding and adhering to rigid, often invisible norms. Even small gestures, eye contact, handshakes, posture, tone of voice, carry social weight. Misreading cues, failing to observe conventions, or ignoring subtle expectations can isolate you, mark you as an outsider, or provoke hostility. Ancient Greek social life is a high-stakes performance, where observation, intuition, and adaptability are as important as physical skill. The modern human, used to anonymous mobility and casual interaction, is immediately exposed as inexperienced and vulnerable. Despite these challenges, ancient Greece is rich in cultural and intellectual stimulation. Philosophy, debate, theater, and civic engagement flourish, and citizens are expected to participate and contribute. Yet this stimulation comes at a cost. Intellectual life is intertwined with social expectations. To engage, you must understand cultural references, rhetorical skill, moral frameworks, and etiquette. Observing a debate without understanding the rules, or attempting participation without training, can be socially disastrous. Even for the educated, navigating these intellectual and social waters is demanding. Modern humans, steeped in casual or digital discourse, are unprepared for the intensity of face-to-face public reasoning and judgment. Public spaces are not neutral, they are arenas of surveillance, observation, and social policing. Neighbors watch each other, market-goers scrutinize behavior, and festivals serve as both entertainment and moral instruction. You begin to understand that privacy is minimal, behavior is public, and every action is judged. For a modern visitor, accustomed to private life and personal boundaries, this is unsettling. You quickly become aware that social survival is as important as physical survival, and in some cases, even more challenging. Humor and play exist but are socially coded. Comedic performances often rely on satire, social commentary, and exaggeration. Laughter is selective and context-dependent. Misreading jokes or responding inappropriately can offend, embarrass, or alienate. Playful interaction, casual teasing, or informal conversation is fraught with potential social pitfalls. Modern casualness is a liability in this structured, performative society. Religious festivals intertwine with social and civic life, adding further complexity. Sacrifices, processions, and rituals require participation, adherence to specific procedures, and knowledge of tradition. Some missing steps, misunderstanding rituals, or failing to honor the gods correctly can bring social opprobrium. Religion, entertainment, and social norms are inseparable, creating a world where every movement, every gesture carries layered meaning. The modern human, unfamiliar with these expectations, is overwhelmed and at risk of unintentional offense. Friendships and alliances are also politically and socially strategic. Social bonds are built and maintained through mutual obligation, participation in civic life, and adherence to cultural norms. Mismanaging these relationships can isolate you, reducing support and safety. Social missteps are costly because cooperation, protection, and survival are deeply intertwined with your ability to navigate the social landscape. Modern assumptions about casual social interaction are inadequate, even dangerous. Even as a spectator of culture, attending plays, athletic competitions, or religious events, you are actively participating in social evaluation. Your attention, reactions, and presence are noticed. Applause, laughter, or silence signals comprehension, respect, or critique. Misreading context risks embarrassment, isolation, or worse. Entertainment is not passive, it is interactive, evaluative, and socially significant. Every moment is a test of cultural literacy, observation, and adaptation. By evening, you are mentally exhausted. The physical labor, hunger, hygiene challenges, and environmental exposure have already taxed your body, But now the social and cultural demands weigh heavily on your mind. Every interaction has required vigilance. Every gesture has carried meaning. Every observation has demanded awareness. You realize that surviving a day in ancient Greece is not just about food or shelter. It is about mastering a complex web of social norms, cultural practices, and expectations. By the time the sun sets and the streets quiet, you understand the full scope of the challenge. Modern life has taught you autonomy, flexibility, and casual interaction. Ancient Greek life demands structure, discipline, and constant social awareness. Even in moments of leisure, play, or entertainment, survival depends on understanding context, hierarchy, ritual, and propriety. Every day in this society is a delicate balancing act of physical endurance, mental acuity, and social intelligence. And so, as darkness falls and the city settles into a quieter rhythm, you reflect on the truth. Entire days in ancient Greece were as taxing socially and culturally as they were physically. Modern humans, accustomed to freedom, convenience, and privacy, are unprepared for this constant scrutiny and expectation. To navigate this world successfully requires observation, patience, adaptability, and respect for the intricate web of social norms that governs every interaction, every meal, every performance, and every ritual. Survival is not guaranteed. It is a daily achievement, a demonstration of skill, awareness, and resilience. Even as you rest, you realize that the Greeks' achievements in politics, philosophy, theater, and art are not only a testament to their intellectual capacity, but also to their mastery of social life under pressure. The ability to thrive in such a complex, demanding environment required as much social intelligence as physical endurance. Modern humans, thrown into this world without preparation, would quickly discover that entertainment, social norms, and cultural participation are survival challenges in themselves.